In just 5 days, a young Chinese cyclist's journey took a dramatic turn. First, he received a 300-kilometer police escort in Iraq, then faced a harrowing experience of imprisonment in Syria that he described as worse than death.
We were held in a Syrian prison for nearly 100 hours. There were 5 of us, crammed into a cell, with over 60 other prisoners in a 20-square-meter space. The floor was wet, and there were no beds, just a filthy ground to sleep on. Every day, 4 of us shared only 2 pieces of bread and drank foul-smelling tap water. We weren't even allowed to use the restroom. We had to relieve ourselves in our pants. We asked to make a call to let our families know we were safe, but they refused and even threatened to beat us. It was infuriating. Here we are, trying to help Syria, and they treat us like dogs. For the first time, I felt so angry and powerless.
This video confession by Xiao Ma, a Chinese travel vlogger, was recorded at the end of October 2024, but has already been removed from Douyin, China's social media platform. Ironically, just 5 days before being imprisoned, these young travelers were proudly posting on social media.
We're being escorted by the Iraqi police now. Only 300 kilometers left to Syria. The police warned us it's dangerous here, with lots of terrorist attacks, so they insisted on escorting us to a safe city with armed guards. I asked why he was helping me, and he said it's because I have a Chinese passport. They turned on their emergency lights and escorted me safely. Wolf Warrior movies downplayed it. Us Chinese can walk anywhere with pride abroad, safe and sound. Right now, we have 2 police cars protecting us, one in front and one behind, while I ride my bike in the middle. You know how cool that feels?
This video quickly went viral, earning 150,000 likes in just a few days. But how did these 2 18-year-olds go from being escorted by police in Iraq to landing in a Syrian prison? The story begins with a free place to stay. While wandering the streets of Syria, Xiao Ma and his friend Siegel found a place offering free accommodation and decided to stay. When the landlord asked if they had any foreign currency, the young travelers, without any caution, opened their bags full of various kinds of cash. After they finished eating, they checked their bag and found that $250 and 500,000 Syrian pounds, which equates to less than $300, had disappeared. Desperate, they called another Chinese vlogger in Syria. He, along with Xiao Ma, Siegel, and 2 others, went to demand the thief return the money. But the Syrian thief wasn't intimidated at all. Instead, he threatened to go to the police, saying, "My relatives all work there. You'll all get locked up." And he wasn't bluffing. When they reached the police station, all 5 of them were accused of trespassing and ended up behind bars in a Syrian prison. As soon as they entered the dungeon, they saw someone being beaten while suspended in the air. The smell was overwhelming, and the vlogger and his 4 companions were crammed into a room less than 20 square meters, holding about 60 people in total. The vlogger tried to call the embassy, but the Syrian police confiscated their phones. Meanwhile, the thief who had caused all this trouble could freely enter and leave the cell, using his own phone to communicate with the outside world. On October 30th, before the young men were finally released, the Syrian police humiliated them one more time, denying them access to the restroom. Xiao Ma couldn't hold it any longer and ended up soiling himself. Only then did the police allow him to strip down and go to the bathroom, treating them as if they were prisoners of war. In the vlogger's words, the Syrian prison felt like something out of hell. They were ultimately freed because other vloggers noticed his silence and tracked him to the police station, where they alerted the Chinese embassy, which intervened on their behalf. This journey, crossing multiple borders, shattered the patriotic image that the CCP had instilled in their minds. These young cyclists, at a formative age, had absorbed ideas from movies like Wolf Warrior, believing that a Chinese passport meant they could walk through the world with ease and that they would be welcomed everywhere as Chinese citizens. In Syria, they failed to recognize that both the Assad regime and the CCP are authoritarian. Despite close ties at the top, This does not filter down, and local law enforcement had no regard for them. The so-called camaraderie between these regimes only exists among the elite. Ordinary people are of no concern unless public opinion threatens the regime's image. When such a threat arises, authoritarian rulers intervene in drastic ways, often disregarding due process. For example, after this incident gained attention, Syrian authorities immediately ordered "No more saying Qingchang China" and executed several prison guards who had mistreated the Chinese prisoners. This is the logic of authoritarian regimes. They ignore injustices faced by citizens until public outcry threatens their image, then respond with extreme measures, exposing the system's hypocrisy. For these young people, indoctrinated by wolf warrior propaganda, this experience may serve as a wake-up call. The friendship between authoritarian regimes has nothing to do with the welfare of ordinary citizens. Videos documenting what these Chinese vloggers in prison have since been ordered removed from Douyin. On Chinese social media, videos showcasing the power of the Chinese passport pop up frequently. On platforms like Bilibili, people claim that in places like Cuba or Latin America, thieves back off as soon as they see a Chinese passport. This type of exaggerated narrative reached its peak in Wolf Warrior 2, where the protagonist raises a Chinese flag and warring immediately cease fire to let the Chinese characters pass. Why does this obviously far-fetched content gain such popularity in China? The reason is simple. Patriotism is the ultimate form of political correctness on Chinese social media, and this content guarantees a surge in views and followers, providing an easy path to fame. In today's China, this explains why even rational influencers are turning into patriotic personalities. Let's take a closer look at signs of fabrication in these videos. For instance, in Xiaoma's cycling video, fast cuts and rapid scene transitions create an illusion of high-level hospitality. Military vehicles escorting them, police greeting them, shared meals, gifts of fruit, and so on. But an experienced person who has worked in Iraq for years pointed out that Chinese people are usually cautious around local police. The reality is that police there have the authority to check foreigners' passports and visas at any time and often demand settlements if there's an issue. Bribes range from several hundred to a couple $1,000s. Essentially, for $100, you could arrange a police escort for a short distance, which can then be edited to look like a heartwarming full escort. The claim that Iraqis give Chinese passport holders preferential treatment doesn't hold up either. In truth, Iraqis are known for their warm personalities and even offer rides or tea to strangers. Such gestures of hospitality are common in Iraq and not exclusive to Chinese travelers. Expanding the view to other countries, the experience of holding a Chinese passport abroad isn't always favorable. A world traveler revealed a harsher reality.
When you don't pull out this passport, it's fine, but the moment you do, locals' eyes light up. You become the big fish or the cash cow. In many countries, corruption is common, and they see Chinese people as easy targets. For example, in Kazakhstan, local traffic police may secretly follow Chinese vehicles for miles before suddenly stopping them, citing a passing violation, and then threaten to suspend the driver's license unless they pay a $2,000 settlement.
Another cycling vlogger shared his experience at Tehran International Airport. Although his passport information was already in the system, the customs officer claimed he had overstayed by more than 30 days. When the vlogger showed his passport with the exit record, the officer simply responded, "I can't read Chinese." He was left with two choices: go back to immigration to sort it out himself, or pay the fine of $4 for each day overstayed. Ultimately, he had to pay $100 plus an additional 12 million Iranian rials, about $24, to settle the issue. Not only that, but the customs officers also helped themselves to small gifts in his luggage. A deliberately overlooked fact is that in underdeveloped regions worldwide, providing escorts for foreigners is often a standard security measure, not a special privilege. In Pakistan, a Chinese tourist shared his real experience. On the way to Quetta, the capital of Balochistan, all vehicles carrying Chinese nationals must be escorted by armed Pakistani security. Even at rest stops, armed guards stand watch constantly. This isn't special treatment, it's strict, high-security protection that makes free movement nearly impossible. The underlying reason is complex. Southern Pakistan's Baloch separatist groups often target Chinese nationals, viewing them as symbols of cooperation with the northern central government due to China's extensive investments and infrastructure projects in the region. These armed groups frequently kidnap Chinese citizens as bargaining chips. The reality is that the CCP's efforts to expand influence in Pakistan, alongside exchanges of interest with Islamabad's elite, have stirred dissatisfaction among people in the south, leaving ordinary Chinese citizens as collateral in local political conflicts. On November 5th, 2 Chinese citizens were injured in a shooting in Karachi, a southern port city of Pakistan. The 2 were factory workers who were shot by guards. Both were hospitalized, one in serious condition. Just last month, another attack near Karachi International Airport killed 2 Chinese nationals. The Baloch Liberation Army, a separatist group, later claimed responsibility. Elsewhere, in Myanmar, Chinese tourists are often detained in so-called fraud zones. In Africa, Chinese individuals are frequently targeted for extortion. Customs officials expect tips upon entry and exit, and it's common for police to stop Chinese nationals on the streets, asking for identification and taking the opportunity to extort money. A Chinese businesswoman with over 10 years of experience in Africa remarked, "If you've really spent time overseas, you'll know the standing of Chinese people isn't very high. About a decade ago, African police were fairly friendly to the Chinese, but as more Chinese arrived, they gradually developed a habit of offering money to avoid trouble. Now, every officer assumes Chinese people are easy targets, rich, timid, and willing to pay to resolve any issue. This has created a fixed impression among local officials. If you need to borrow money or want a handout, go to the Chinese." Just recently in Iran, several Chinese internet personalities were hitchhiking when they were taken to a remote area and robbed. One Chinese individual was even shot, collapsing by the roadside, which alarmed the robbers enough to flee with the stolen belongings. Bystanders eventually found the group and called the police and ambulance, saving their lives. Despite contacting the Chinese embassy for assistance, they've yet to receive any response. In another incident to the Iran-Iraq border, 2 Chinese travelers were ambushed. They were taken to a deserted area where robbers pulled over, brandished knives, and demanded their belongings. When they resisted, the robbers attacked them, leaving one with a slash wound, another with a head injury, and a nosebleed. Their bags were stolen, but fortunately they managed to keep their phones. The stark contrast between patriotic propaganda and reality exposes the false nature of wolf warrior narratives and highlights a deeper issue. Why do Chinese tourists frequently become easy targets for law enforcement abroad? In China, power often overrides the rule of law, with the law used as tools of control rather than a shield for citizens' rights. When faced with official pressure, the public has grown accustomed to paying to avoid trouble, creating a conditioned response over time. This mindset has traveled with Chinese citizens overseas, making them ideal targets for extortion. Additionally, China's education system emphasizes obedience over rights, leaving many citizens with little awareness of how to protect their rights legally. This deeply ingrained submissive mindset leads many Chinese abroad to instinctively use money to solve issues rather than standing up for themselves. This explains why citizens from other countries confidently assert their rights abroad, while many Chinese reflexively pay to avoid disasters. This isn't an inherent trait, but rather a result of authoritarian rule. The Chinese Communist Party has suppressed legal consciousness, blocked avenues for defending rights, and fostered a culture of corruption and privilege. Recognizing this helps to explain why the Chinese passport has become a symbol of vulnerability overseas. Comments from netizens reflect these insights. "I love reading the whole saga, from confident boasting to a harsh slap of reality. It wasn't an escort in Iraq, it was a precaution to keep these people from causing trouble on Iraqi soil. They're worried he might overstay and disappear into Iraq. The CCP lied to them first, and now these fools are lying to themselves." While the CCP stirs up nationalist fervor, it has also had to bow to reality. To salvage a faltering economy since 2023, the CCP has unilaterally lifted visa requirements for several countries. These include Switzerland, Ireland, Hungary, Austria, South Korea, as well as 9 other countries. Yet the nationalist sentiments it fueled have begun to backfire. When South Korea was added to the visa-free list, instead of celebrating the ease of trade, some nationalists angrily demanded, why doesn't South Korea make itself visa-free for China? In the past, developed countries occasionally allowed Chinese group tours visa-free, but entire tour groups would disappear upon arrival, remaining illegally. Moreover, China's wolf warrior diplomacy and pervasive xenophobia have made these countries wary of granting visa-free access to Chinese tourists. The CCP's manufactured patriotic fervor has started showing dangerous repercussions. On China's National Day, October 1st, a 23-year-old Chinese man stabbed 3 5-year-old children in Switzerland. Local media reported that the suspect, a pro-CCP graduate student from the University of Zurich, had described himself on social media as a CCP nationalist and expressed anger over discussions of Taiwan's sovereignty. This is not an isolated incident. On September 18, 2023, a man in Shenzhen fatally stabbed a 10-year-old boy attending a Japanese school. In June of the same year, a Japanese mother and son were attacked in Suzhou, and 4 Americans were stabbed in Jilin. Extreme nationalism has not only fueled violent actions, but also severely distorted the thinking of some citizens. Capitalizing on China's friendship with Russia, all things Russian have become a guaranteed way to attract attention on Chinese social media. Opportunistic merchants have seized on this trend, producing and selling large quantities of fake Russian goods to turn a quick profit. One of the most notorious examples is the so-called Russian-imported camel milk powder. Marketed as Desert Platinum, this product has been promoted by hundreds of live streamers on Chinese platforms. In reality, it's mixed from vegetable fat powder and maltodextrin in a basic workshop in Henan, with no milk content at all. A diabetic who consumed it experienced a dangerous spike in blood sugar, while the workshop owner reportedly bought a new car and a house in just a year. Frustrated by these scams, several Russians in China have stepped forward to expose the fraud. They pointed out that Russia doesn't even have large-scale camel farming, and many so-called Russian foods sold in China are unheard of in Russia itself. These products are actually counterfeits produced in northeastern China under Russian-registered brand names. This craze has gone beyond mere gullibility. Some brainwashed little pinks have even gone to Ukraine as mercenaries to support Russia, only to lose their lives in foreign lands. This shift, from blindly buying faked goods to volunteering on the battlefield, reflects the severe distortion of public perception caused by nationalist propaganda. A recent moment at the Xiangshan Forum highlighted this contradiction. Lieutenant General He Lei, former deputy director of the People's Liberation Academy of Military Sciences, presented a calligraphy scroll to a U.S. representative. The scroll read, "Harmony is precious." This gesture immediately triggered backlash among nationalist supporters. Isn't this a sign of weakness, they questioned? Are they afraid to fight? These reactions show the effects of nationalist propaganda. When the CCP tries to adopt a practical approach in foreign relations, it finds itself limited by the very wolf warrior supporters it created. As one netizen quipped, the foreign ministry says fight and win, while the defense ministry says harmony is precious. The CCP now faces a dilemma. It must be pragmatic in international relations, yet it dares not puncture the wolf warrior illusion domestically, effectively trapping itself. Citizens are left confused, and the international community finds it hard to trust the CCP.